you hear all this about the different generations and how, their idiosyncrasies and their work ethics and all of that. And, to me, I think that's a poor rationalization for bad leadership. I think great leaders say, okay, I've got a millennial, I need to manage them this way. The rigidity of business is over.
Welcome to Get Unstuck and On Target, the weekly podcast that offers senior leaders insights and strategies to not only lead with competence and vision, but also to achieve groundbreaking results. I'm your host, Mike O'Neill. I coach top-level executives on the power of ethical leadership to forge teams to be as united as they are effective. In each episode, join me for insightful conversations with leaders just like you, providing practical advice to help you get unstuck and propel you and your company forward. Let's get started. Joining me is Luke LaRue. Luke is a hospitality executive with over 25 years of management experience in large restaurant and hotel groups. He is currently the Chief Operating Officer of CentraArchy Restaurants, a family-owned and operated company with 14 locations across the Southeast. As the COO, Luke oversees the day-to-day operations of the company, ensuring the highest standards of service, food, and atmosphere for the guest. He also leads and develops a team of talented and dedicated professionals who share his vision of creating a successful and sustainable business. Luke's core competencies include hospitality, team building, restaurant management, and operational excellence. He's passionate about the industry, you'll see that loud and clear, and he strives to deliver exceptional experiences for every customer. Welcome, Luke.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Luke, we had an opportunity to spend some time together, and when I just listed your core competencies, we could do a podcast on any of those competencies, but particularly how you build teams, how you build leadership teams in particular would be something I'd like to spend some time with. But why don't we start with your industry? For those who don't know about your business and the kind of units you all run, can you describe that a little bit for us, please?
Yep. So my current company, we have 14 locations. We're building our 15th location in New Orleans currently. We cover 5 different concepts. We have, high-level steakhouses, mid-tiered steakhouses, and a group of casual restaurants spanning from South Carolina down to Louisiana. Mm-hmm. The check averages are very different in each location. The clientele is different in each location, and it's something that we need to be constantly thinking about and pivoting to make sure we're creating what we have coined guests for life. We want every single guest to return. That's how we make our money. And so, it's very interesting how we can, keep our day-to-day exciting because we're managing 5 different concepts.
Wait, real question. And what I know about these concepts is you offer fine dining experience.
Yes. So, for our steakhouses, we believe that we need to be as technically proficient as a fine dining restaurant as if you were going to a Michelin-starred restaurant in Paris. We would want that level of service, but we want to add an element of character and charisma and confidence to the service. And most important is we want it to be fun. We find that the super fine dining are very stuffy. The servers are vapor. They're not supposed to exist, and with steakhouses, there's a liveliness to it. There's a confidence, there's a bravado, if you will. And so we kind of have mixed both worlds. We do respect the check average. It is expensive to eat in a steakhouse, and we take that very, very seriously. We have a responsibility to our guests for the amount of money they're spending to eat in those restaurants. So, it can't be good. It can't be great. It has to be perfect every time.
There's 2 things I want to follow up with. One, guest for life. When you look at that, if they have a poor experience, you may have lost that guest forever.
Yeah. We try and promote, a 100% table touch experience. So for our management teams, they need to interact with every table. And some of those interactions can be a matter of seconds, and some of those interactions might be 10 or 15 minutes. But it's very, very important that they're digging in and realizing, that a guest potentially may be unhappy with their experience. We wait on 3,000 to 4,000 people a week per steakhouse. We're going to make mistakes. How we recover from those mistakes is what makes the difference in the guest's mind. I do not care about the cost of recovery. It's not a line item that I manage in our company, because I believe that the operators need to do anything possible. If we messed up, we need to fix it. I'll give you an example. You go to these restaurants and they mess up your entrees, and it takes 45 minutes, and then they buy you a $7 dessert. Right. Well, that's not enough. But first and foremost, it starts with the level of empathy and care. The guest needs to feel that we really care that we messed up. And, I got to be honest with you, Mike, the guests that are in my cell phone, 99% of them are guests that I pissed off at some point in my restaurant.
Interesting. Really?
And, it's how you recover it that really matters. But if I do your wedding, I want to do your kid's christening or their confirmation 13 years from now. We own the dirt in a lot of our locations, so we're not going anywhere. This isn't a 10-year run for us. We are a family-owned company, so we're building legacy for generations. And we take that very, very seriously. It's a very big responsibility that, Jerry's grandchildren's grandchildren still have a company that is viable and successful. And we can only do that by making sure people come back.
Yeah, I want to follow up on that as well. The second thing I was going to ask you about is, I know we've been talking about the high-end steakhouses and you have other offerings, but let's stick with that just for a moment. You're trying to assure a very, very positive experience for the guest. And you therefore probably expect operational excellence, if that's the right term, but you use the word fun. And that is, you want it to be fun for the guest, and I guess also for the folks who work for you. How do you incorporate, in what ways can you make fun just part of what y'all do?
Well, it's a twofold thing. For the guest experience, it's about the ambiance, right? You look at the lighting, the atmosphere, the music. What are the levels of music? What is the temperature in the room? We look at those things. When the ladies put their coats on, it's too cold. They're fanning themselves, it's too hot. And those details really, really matter. For a long time pre-COVID, we were a Frank Sinatra playlist in our steakhouses. And, we realized that it was starting to get dated. And when we reopened after COVID, we went to 70s and 80s rock and roll music.
Interesting.
It just completely changed the environment. I mean, I grew up listening to that music, and I'm the target clientele of the steakhouse at this point. My father listened to Sinatra. So, creating that atmosphere for our guests really, kind of changed the trajectory of the restaurants. Now, from an employee standpoint, I'm a firm believer that employees like to be in environments that have high standards.
Yep.
And, we have a mission to surround ourselves with only A players. We like to only hire A players. We develop B players into A players. And that's what makes it fun. A lot of times great employees will become very disgruntled and very unhappy if a restaurant allows bad behavior, or if a restaurant allows people that don't care to exist. And that makes it not fun. We call them black holes of joy, right? Any joy in your body gets sucked out if you get too close to that employee. We eliminate those people very, very quickly. And I believe that managing in the black and white, having no gray, creating an environment where we are proud every day makes it fun. We have informative pre-shifts every single day. We try and inform, inspire, and educate as much as we possibly can. When people feel like they're getting better, it tends to make it a more palatable work environment. The restaurant business is tough. It's become much harder since COVID. There's been a cosmic shift in, guest interaction and guest expectations, and the companies that are able to navigate that well are very successful. But the way the employees are being treated can sometimes not feel great. But we tell them, a bad guest is in your restaurant for an hour, right? So provide the standard of service that they expect out of our steakhouse and understand that they're gone. And don't focus on that. Focus on the great guests. Focus on the guests that treat you well. Focus on the guests that respect the restaurant and respect you as an individual. And it seems to be working. Our turnover rate is less than 10% in the steakhouses, which is unheard of in the restaurant business. And I don't let anybody talk about money. I don't think because servers make money or bartenders make money is why they stay. They stay because they're being developed, they're being inspired, and they have leaders that work hard side by side with them. I believe in being a company of doers, not delegators. Of course, you have to delegate as a leader, but if you're not also doing and getting, in the trenches with your people, they're not going to be having fun and they're not going to respect you. Hard work in the hospitality industry, I think, is pretty much, competency number one. You have to have that work ethic. And if you show that work ethic to your employees, they'll follow suit.
Luke, we're going to stick with the high-end steakhouses just for a moment. And that is when you just casually mentioned 10% turnover, that is unbelievable in light of everything we read and hear about the hospitality industry. Do you believe the things you have shared thus far contribute in large part to that low turnover?
I definitely do. I think how we make our employees feel when they're at work is really, really important, because I believe that hospitality is about how we make our guests feel. How do they feel when they're in the restaurant? We look a lot at our value scores more than anything. Food and beverage, you open a restaurant, you want to be serving great food and great beverages, right? That's a given. But how the guests perceive value, I believe, is how we make them feel. And I think it's the same way for our employees. We're strict. There are standards and you need to uphold those standards, but we're consistent. We don't play favorites. Everybody is held to the same standard. I believe that we answer to the standard, not the position. So we don't have a lot of hierarchy. I'm the chief operating officer. If I see that there's, debris on the floor, I'm going to grab that broom and sweep it up myself. That's because that's the standard to have clean floors. And I think the employees respect us for that. I see, you hear a lot about how difficult it is to hire people and how difficult it is to retain people. We never really had that problem. I think first and foremost, being present is really, really important. We noticed that during this post-COVID hiring, where everybody was putting signs up in their restaurants, please excuse the poor service, we're understaffed. I thought that was a travesty. And what it was that managers weren't present. They can place an ad and say interviews are between 12 and 4 and not be there at 12. Or they wouldn't, offer the applicant a glass of water while they filled out their application. They didn't show a sense of hospitality and trying to create employees for life, which is equally as important. And so they were understaffed. I think the other thing is that we really believe in surrounding ourselves with great people, and that attracts talent. If you have a lot of B and C players, well, that's what you're going to attract, and you're going to have a tremendous amount of turnover. But, if you hire slow and you really wait and you interview, you might interview 200 candidates to hire 4 to have 2 make it through training. but that's the job, and that's where it has gone to. And we made that a really big part of our conversations after we reopened after COVID. And we were never understaffed. And, our sales showed it and our profitability showed it. I mean, we increased sales with 50% dining rooms because of post-COVID regulations and rules. And, we just continue to grow. The other important thing is we look at these statistics. We post our turnover rates quarterly, and it is public. Back after Giuliani took over for David Dinkins in New York City, he used to bring all the captains of the police departments into a room and post their statistics up on the board. And he'd ask questions and he would say, well, why is this way? And what's happening? And what are you doing to fix it? And then the next week he would put them all in the same room and he'd say, okay, it's a week later, what's changed? And we follow that model. We have bi-weekly meetings for the operating partners and, senior managers. They switch off every week and we go through their numbers and we ask those questions. And, it's very, very public forum. And, when we first rolled it out, everybody was a little uncomfortable. But now there's a slight competitiveness to it. You see, 3 years later, everybody is prepared for the calls. They understand where their numbers are. They understand what they need to do to fix it. And they have those answers ready. And I think that's part of how we're developing our leaders to be the next, I want them to replace me. Right. So, that's what's helped in our turnover. I mean, everybody is on board, so to speak.
Luke, when we met prior to recording this podcast, there are two terms I wrote down, and I'm looking at those right now. And you actually touched on both of those. I'd like to kind of come back to them. First of all, from a COO perspective, I don't hear the word feel very often. And that's not the case with you. That's not the case with your organization. You're realizing that what you're selling is a feeling, are you not?
Yeah, absolutely. As the economy may or may not be softening and it's an election year, I mean, this year is really the test for our company of where we're going and where we're going to end up. We realized very, very quickly that hospitality is about feeling. And hospitality is one of those things that's gray, right? When an operator says, my goal is to increase the sense of hospitality. Well, what does that really mean? And how do we really achieve that? But I think that the operators that can focus on how their employees feel when they come to work and in turn, how their guests feel as they're leaving the restaurant, those are the ones that are very, very successful. And again, it goes back to that value score, Mike. We're parting people from their money, right? And we're offering a service that people need to spend good money on, whether it's the casuals at $40 a person or the steakhouses at $100 a person. We have to really understand the responsibility that we have to deliver, and especially in a down economy, right? They're going to go to the places that they feel good about when they leave. And they say that was a great experience and or that was a flawless experience. If they walk out and they're saying, that was okay, maybe we'll go back. We failed, and the one thing I do believe is that it has less to do with price and more about how they feel. And that's the most important thing. And it's the warm welcome when you come in, to the warm goodbye and the genuine thank you as you're walking out. How many times have you gone to a restaurant or even Home Depot, and said thank you or and they don't even respond to you, right? Immediately that sucks out everything that we did great for the last hour and a half while the guest was in our restaurant, right? So, we look at all of those touch points all the way down to our valet parkers in terms of how are we making these guests feel. And do they feel like they are the most important person in that room the entire time they're with us? And if we can do that, we've achieved success.
Thus far, Luke, we've talked quite a bit about what you want the guest experience to be. We've talked about how you've been able to attract and retain those employees who have direct contact either with the food and or the customers. Let's kind of move up to management for a moment. You used the term earlier, operating partners, and I suspect that's a different word for what? General manager?
Yeah. So, we want our people to feel like they have skin in the game. We want to create that entrepreneurial spirit as if it was their money that invested into land and the build out and all that. We always have a saying, treat it as if it was yours, as if you owned it. And operating partner helps us do that. The term CentraArchy, it's about a circular management where everybody has a say, and everybody has the ability to move the needle, and make our restaurants better than we were yesterday. And that's where that operating partner comes into play. And, we allow all of our people to have a voice. And I believe that from the most green junior manager that we have to our 30-year operating partner, everybody has a voice. What we're very good at is that we provide direct feedback. So, when they come to us with an idea or they say they want to try something, there's three outcomes, right? There's, yeah, go for it. Let's see what happens, right? Let's try it. There's, that might be cost prohibitive. Let's go back to the drawing board and rewrite the game plan and see if we can do this where it actually makes sense financially for us. Or the third one is we say, we're not going to go with that idea. I don't think it fits our model right now. But please keep coming back, keep trying. And, having that type of direct and immediate feedback has helped us continue those conversations. Our Wednesday calls are very much, one slide will be just an open-ended question, right? What are you doing to build sales? Today's meeting at 2:00 is about, what are you doing to create an employee for life environment in your restaurants? And, we have our 14 operators on the big screen, and, the guy in New Orleans might come up with a great idea that the people in South Carolina use, and vice versa. So it's very much, we'll give them that spirit of entrepreneurship to really focus on, the success of their restaurants. We also have a very, very competitive bonus program in our company, which allows them to also feel like they're part of the big picture.
Yes. Luke, you had shared that this is a family-owned and operated set of restaurants, and you also mentioned that more often than not, your restaurants sit on dirt that you own. Mm-hmm. And though you didn't use the term, the long game is what kind of crossed my mind, and that is, it would appear to me that you're all able to operate with that perspective. You have generations have passed through. In terms of the number of generations currently represented, what generation are you all on at this point?
So this would be the patriarch is still around,
okay.
And his son is our president. Okay. Of the company. It's difficult to say because they have children, but it really is about the long game. Mm-hmm. And Vince Van Braun, our CEO, and myself, really take that seriously. When we sit there, we say, the decisions that we're making will affect Jerry's grandchildren's grandchildren.
Yeah.
So we strategically reinvest into our locations. We have a saying, you need to be better than you were yesterday. And what that means is that we will continue to grow the company every single day. Whether it's just being, best in class, or, weathering the storm of a down economy, or, whatever pops up, what we're trying to do is create that stable foundation so these restaurants continue to provide for the family. And Vince and I are not part of the family. However, we take it very, very seriously. And the company has a way of making everybody feel like they're part of it, and so it's just been an incredible working environment, Mike. It's an incredible experience, and watching the company continue to grow and become more operationally sound and more successful, is one part humbling, right? We just try not to mess it up at this point, and we do it because of how we're treated as the executives in the company by the family. And so all of that kind of trickles down to the dishwashers, to the lowest level people in the stores.
Luke, you have 25 plus years of experience in restaurants and hotels. Can you reflect on a situation where perhaps you or the organization you're a part of got stuck? And when that happened, what did it take to get unstuck?
I can tell you, Mike, I think at CentraArchy, we were stuck. I joined the company in July of 2019, and COVID hit March of 2020. At that point, I think some of our stores were a little dated. They weren't operationally excellent. There was a little bit of a mentality from the previous leadership that, it was about cut costs and raise prices, which we don't believe in. Our firm belief is to, each plate and each guest one at a time, we will build sales that way. So, there's two types of cultural change that you can see in a company. There's the 10-degree shifts in behavior, which is what we believe in now, where we slowly change our behavior and pivot. And, in a year, we've moved the battleship, and it's a change that's going to stick. But there's also swift cultural change. And in a family-owned business, that's very difficult to do. There's a lot of loyalty and there's a lot of things. And COVID helped us do that. We went to the takeout model that a lot of restaurants did March 17th, 2020. And, pretty much to summarize it, we were doing 100,000 a week in sales before the dining rooms closed, and we dropped to 5,000 a week. And started doing takeout. And, we realized it wasn't sustainable. And more importantly, we realized that we had failed our neighborhoods, and we had failed the 4 miles around the restaurants, because nobody was really supporting us for our to-go, right? So, March 24th, 2020, we closed 14 locations. Well, at that point, we had 17 locations that we closed. During COVID, we decided not to reopen 3 of our locations. But what we did was we went through and we said, what is our manifesto for success? And how are we going to get this message to our people? And we need to create a swift cultural change. And so we immediately terminated all of the C players. We decided we weren't going to reopen with them. We let them know. It was a difficult decision to make, but, we were fighting for our lives at that point. We had no idea what the restaurant and hospitality industry was going to look like after we reopened. We then created what was going to be the goals and expectations of all of our operators, and went to all 14 restaurants before we reopened and sat with them and looked them in the eyes and said, this is our expectations moving forward, and this is how we're going to run this company moving forward. And, 2 of the gentlemen, they dropped out. They said, you know what, I'm not interested in working that hard or really trying to fight that hard for success. And we were okay with that. We promoted a couple people from assistant general manager to operating partners, and we reopened with the 14 restaurants, and it was a lot of pivoting. There was a lot of, we were going 100 miles an hour towards direction A, and we realized that was the wrong direction, and we immediately pivoted to a different direction. But it worked. We cleaned up our restaurants, we put the right people on the bus, and then put those people in the right seats. And even with 50% dining rooms, we increased sales and increased EBITDA tremendously that first year after COVID. And that just helped us change the trajectory of the company. It was difficult. It wasn't without pain. It wasn't without a massive amount of stress. We took the responsibility of making sure our people could provide for their families very, very seriously after COVID. But it really helped us become unstuck. And we were kind of lucky, and I think it's crazy to say that COVID was the best thing that happened to us. But it really was in this case. It enabled us to create that cultural change, which can be very, very dangerous in an organization, especially in an organization that's been around 35 years. That usually doesn't work. But COVID enabled us to do that.
Luke, you probably don't know this, but right when COVID hit, I was encouraged, Mike, why don't you host a live webinar? And I did. That became a weekly webinar for 24 weeks. But then that morphed into this podcast. Wow. But what really brought it all together is the world was stuck. Right. How can we together work together to get unstuck? And the title and the concept has stayed throughout, in large part because what you're sharing is a success story, but you're not sugarcoating the challenges that you had to overcome and you continue to have to overcome to maintain a growing improvement in operational excellence and all the numbers that you're looking at. If you reflect on this conversation, what do you want to be the takeaways for our listeners?
I think the takeaway is that, the world has changed and we either adapt or die. And I think, if we don't change the way that we operate our businesses in terms of our people, and then in terms of what our guests or customers see, we're not going to be successful. We've always done it this way is the most dangerous phrase in business. And I think it's a constant pivot. You hear all this about the different generations and how, their idiosyncrasies and their work ethics and all of that. And, to me, I think that's a poor rationalization for bad leadership. I think great leaders say, okay, I've got a millennial, I need to manage them this way. And yes. I've got a Gen Y, and I need to pivot for them because they react different. And so I think the biggest takeaway is, the rigidity of business is over. It's over. And the people that are able to pivot and the people that are able to, really focus on how everybody feels, whether it's their employee, their guests, or themselves, are going to be the most successful people.
Excellent recap, Luke. Before we wrap up, let me ask our listeners a question. You ever wonder why people follow your lead? Is it out of obligation or because they truly believe in your vision? With extensive experience in HR leadership and executive coaching, I've seen firsthand the essence of leadership. It's clarity and confidence. It's about practical solutions that deliver bottom line results. With a tailored approach informed by Fortune 500 insights, we'll address your unique leadership challenges head on. Are you ready to lead with impact? Visit bench-builders.com. Let's unlock your leadership potential and make real strides towards your goals. Until we meet again, focus on leading in a way that inspires others to follow, not because they have to, but because they want to. Luke, you have shared some fantastic insights. I've learned a great deal from you. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Mike. I really appreciate you having me on the show.
I am confident those watching and listening to this are going to want to learn more from you. What's the best way for them to connect with you?
Through LinkedIn would be the best way.
Do me a favor. Go ahead and Luke LaRue rolls off the tongue, but just to go on LinkedIn to find your profile, they type in what?
The Luke, L-U-K-E, and then LaRue, L-H-E-U-R-E-U-X. There's only one of me.
Well, there's only one perhaps, but I think you are unique. You've given me a considerable appreciation for kind of what you're doing, what y'all are doing. And I'm looking forward to visiting one of y'all's restaurants and experience that firsthand. Again, thank you for being with me today.
Thanks again, Mike. We appreciate it.
I also want to thank our subscribers for joining us, and I hope you have picked up on some quick wins from Luke. They'll help you get unstuck and on target. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Get Unstuck and On Target. I hope you've gained insights to help you lead with confidence and drive your organization forward. Remember, at Bench Builders, we're committed to your success, your leadership excellence, and your strategic growth. If you've enjoyed our conversation today, please leave a review, rate, and subscribe to keep up with our latest episodes. This show really grows when listeners like you share it with others. Who do you know who needs to hear what we talked about today? Until next time, I encourage you to stay focused on the target and continue to break new ground on your leadership path.